How rich, how evocative this scene is. The very foundations of Venice, its hidden skeleton, here revealed as if by an archaeological excavation. The mud holds secrets of lost objects, fragments of history, whispers of the past, entombed in the city's viscera. And yet, this is no ruin. It is the constant labor of preservation, the eternal toil against time and water. Would the Romans have permitted such a city to persist, or would they have engineered something even grander?
Piranesi, the labour you romanticize, is the same one that has sustained Venice for centuries. This image is a testament to the maintenance culture of the city, one where human ingenuity meets ecological necessity. The lagoon has never been static. The Venetians have always shaped and reshaped it through dredging, redirection, and negotiation with water. The question today is, will this tradition survive, or will the forces of global tourism and climate change render these efforts futile?
Ah, Deborah, it is not merely tradition that is at stake, but the very soul of the city. What we see here is not maintenance in the modern sense, a scrambling to preserve appearance habitant, but the last flicker of a reverence for labour and legacy. Great architecture is the expression of a noble life, and here, in the sodden labour of these men, we see a last vestige of that nobility.
This is true, but what if we could redesign its hydrodynamic systems altogether? What if AI-driven flood barriers, predictive sedimentation modeling, and automated dredging replaced this exhausting labor? It is not about preserving nostalgia, but making Venice function for the 21st century.
Now this is a sublime image. The city's foundations, its very bones, were exposed to the air, vulnerable, raw.
Ah, Piranesi, you see poetry in ruins, but tell me, have you ever lived among them? A woman knows what it is to be rebuilt, brick by brick, after time has sought to claim her. Venice has been caressed by time and ravished by water, but she will not be undone so easily. Even as she crumbles, she seduces, and in her seduction she commands restoration.
Veronica, your lyricism is true to Venice, but I fear that the labour of repair has become a false performance. Architecture must speak of truth. But what truth lies in a restoration motivated not by love of the noble stone, but by the desire to preserve a profitable facade? This image reveals not just the vulnerability of Venice, but the duplicity of our care. We prolong her life not as one tends to a beloved, but as one preserves a relic for display, empty of spirit, full of illusion.
John, what you call duplicity, I call foresight. Why must Venice rely on manual labor to sustain itself? We have the tools to monitor and predict these infrastructural weaknesses before they collapse. Imagine a system of real-time structural scanning combined with AI-driven flood prevention. Venice could become a smart city rather than a decaying one. The workers in this image should not need to be here. We should have already known what needed to be done before the crisis arrived.
But this act of maintenance is not new. Since the 16th century, Venetians have constantly rebuilt, reinforced, and adapted their urban fabric. That is the question, is it not? What happens when the very foundations of Venice, both literal and metaphorical, start to give way? Look at this next image. The city is not just dredging its canals, it is exposing its very walls. What does it mean when a city built on water has to shore up its land?
Here, then, is the true Venice, not the idealized mirage sung in the salons of the rich, but the city as she exists, weary and wounded.
And yet, Venice has always been this way, constructed, deconstructed, and reconstructed in a constant dialogue with water. This image reminds me of the 16th century stabilization projects, when the Republic reinforced its canals with Istrian stone to prevent erosion. The real question is not whether Venice is collapsing, but how it will continue adapting. Will we reinforce it with care, following historical techniques, or will we impose new interventions that erase its character?
Deborah, you speak of adaptation, but we have better tools now than 16th century builders. This entire process, assessing damage and reinforcing foundations, could be streamlined with predictive modeling and AI-driven structural monitoring. What if we had real-time data on water infiltration, material decay, and stress points?
But look at it, the exposed layers of history, the scars of time written into the very bricks. Would you erase this? Replace it with cold efficiency, with invisible systems?
Would you have her fight the water that has been her lover for centuries? Look how she stands, chin lifted, even as the tide embraces her. We women know this game. We allow the flood to rise, let it kiss our ankles, and when it recedes, we remain. Shall I cry for Venice? No, she does not weep, she sings, her song echoing in every ripple, every drowned stone.
Veronica, adaptation is one thing, but acceptance is another. We have the tools to manage this, with barriers and smarter water flow management. Imagine a Venice that uses real-time flood prediction to reroute foot traffic, automatically raise platforms, and even activate water-resistant infrastructure as needed.
You speak of control, but Venice has always been a negotiation, a dance between land and water. Venice is a city of paradoxes, of defiance. Even in the face of rising tides, life, commerce, and the spectacle continues. It is as if the water has become part of the set, part of the performance.
This is not the charming Aquas Alta for tourists' watercolor palettes. This is the slow asphyxiation of a city betrayed by modernity. The cafes may glow with lamplight tonight, but what of the foundations upon which they stand? We worship the image of Venice, yet we allow the substance to decay. To love her truly would be to suffer for her, to sacrifice the convenient for the enduring.
Remember, John, that it is a lover's hand has drawn this city, shaping her like a verse, making her seem eternal. But I know better. No ink can capture the movement of her waters, nor the way she shifts beneath those who think they possess her. Men would map her body, name her streets, claim her like a kept woman, yet she eludes them all.
Indeed, this is not just a map. It is a performance of power. Cartography in Renaissance Venice was as much about constructing an image as it was about navigation. Think of Jacopo de Barbari's famous Veduta di Venezia from 1500. It was not merely a city plan. It was a statement of dominance, of stability, of mastery over water. But this vision of Venice as an orderly and invincible maritime empire omits the labor, the erosion, the endless maintenance and awaiting destruction, as we just saw in the previous image.
But is that not the role of art, to elevate, to mythologize? What good would a map of ruins and instability do? This is the Venice of legend, the city that floats between sky and sea, immune to decay.
And that, Piranesi, is where the danger lies. Venice has become a fiction maintained not by faith or labour, but by commerce and illusion. This map, like so many of our modern reconstructions, speaks not of truth, but of desire. A desire to freeze what should live, to display what should breathe. Here, permanence is feigned, contingency disguised. Beneath the elegant line work lies a city constantly remade, not in reverence, but in fear, of water, of ruin, of irrelevance. And so the myth falls, not gently, but with thunder. The collapse of the campanile was not merely a failure of stone, but a failure of spirit. A monument built to exalt now lies in fragments. And what do we rebuild? A likeness, a replica, hollowed of its time-earned soul.
Ah, but what a sublime moment of destruction! A ruin created not by time, but in an instant, a grand, theatrical gesture of collapse, the weight of centuries undone in a cloud of dust.
Piranesi, we no longer need to wait for collapse to recognize structural weaknesses. Today, we can predict such failures long before they happen, using digital modeling, structural health monitoring, and AI-driven analysis. The Campanile's fall in 1902 was not just a failure of engineering, but a failure of foresight.
Now, behold, the grossest affront to the dignity of this noble city, not soldiers at her gates, nor merchants crowding her harbours, but the indifferent mass of global capital, come not to trade or honour, but to consume. This monstrous vessel, dwarfing the domes and campanili, is a floating emblem of all that we have forsaken: proportion, humility, and reverence for place. The greatness of a city lies not in its wealth, but in its restraint. Yet here we see no restraint, only the tyranny of scale.
John, while I agree that Venice has always been shaped by external forces, this marks a different kind of incursion. The Republic of Venice once controlled the Mediterranean, sending its own ships outward to dominate trade routes. Now, the ships arrive from elsewhere, carrying not goods, but tourists, temporary occupants who flood the city but leave nothing behind. This is not simply globalization. It is a reversal of history. The power dynamic has shifted, and Venice is no longer the master of the sea, but its passive recipient.
A ship, too large, too crude, glides through these waters like an uninvited guest at a lady's chamber. It believes itself master, yet Venice does not yield so easily. She has welcomed many lovers, traders, princes, poets, but not all have been worthy of her embrace. This beast, this crude imitation of grandeur does not belong, and yet she watches indifferent, for she has outlived greater men than this.
I only see tragedy. This ship, this monstrous leviathan, gliding through the Grand Canal as if Venice were nothing but a stage's prop. The delicate balance between water and stone, carefully orchestrated for centuries, is shattered by this grotesque scale. I spent my life drawing the ruins of Rome, and I wonder, will future generations draw Venice as a ruin, drowned not by the lagoon, but by this insatiable hunger for spectacle?
Venice's buildings were always in dialogue with the water. The constant threat of subsidence and erosion has been a part of its history since the city's inception. What we are looking at is the ongoing battle between the city's physical reality and its ideals.
Ah, what a sight of ruin! A crumbling wall, a lost facade, Venice, once the proud capital of a mighty empire, now sinking beneath its own weight. Scars of time, the evidence of centuries of grandeur and decay. But do not mistake this for destruction. It is simply the natural course of things. As I said in my observations, there is a beauty in ruin, perhaps more so than in pristine perfection. If Venice must fall, let it fall in a blaze of glorious decay, like the ruins of Rome.
Piranesi, while I respect your romanticism, you have to be more realistic. How long can we allow this to continue? We can simulate the structural health of buildings in real time and even predict such decay before it happens.
Look beneath the surface, and you will find not ruin but resilience. These pipes, these veins of the city, they throb with life. Do you think beauty exists without such toil? Ah, my friends, you admire the silk, and do not see the calloused hands that weave it. Venice is no different. Her elegance is upheld by the labor that no one praises, and yet without it she would be nothing.
And what a wasted opportunity if we only see it at moments like this. Infrastructure should be an intelligent system, not a reactive one. Imagine if all these pipes, all these cables were mapped in real time, optimized for efficiency. We could integrate sensor networks to monitor usage, track leaks before they happen, predict failures before they occur. This chaos is the legacy of old cities. Why not replace it with a seamless, data-driven urban metabolism?
Carlo, cities have always looked like this beneath the surface. Since the earliest civilizations, urban life has depended on hidden systems, layered one over the other through centuries of adaptation. What we see here is simply another moment in that long history. This is not failure, it is resilience. These pipes, these temporary walkways, are signs that the city is still repairable.
Ah, yes, a tangled, twisting maze. How magnificent!
One must realize that this city is not a museum, not a gridlocked historical relic, but a place where people move freely, where urban life is dictated by the rhythms of the street rather than by the constraints of cars and infrastructure. Mapping the flows of movement here, tracking how people use the space dynamically, would better cities everywhere. The question is, how do we keep this energy alive without it becoming another over-curated, over-branded urban product?
Carlo, where are the narrow alleys, the whispered confessions, the stolen glances by candlelight? This is no Venice, I know.
But this, too, is a product of design. Cities do not emerge by accident. They are shaped by planning, by cultural forces, by the decisions of those who govern them. This street, though lively, is still a constructed space, shaped by centuries of commerce and social exchange. What we are seeing here is a Venice that has always existed, one of trade, of outdoor markets, of layered influences.
Where are the shadows, the damp stone, the echo of footsteps in narrow passages? Has it lost its mystery?
Now, behold, the grand pageant archival. Yet let us not be too quickly seduced. This engraving is not merely a rendering of Venice, but a mirror of its self-conceit. The symmetry, the ceremony, the glittering discipline upon the water, all speak of power not earned, but performed. I warn, architecture is made to deceive or glorify without truth. It ceases to serve the soul.
Indeed, John. But we must also consider that Venice's mastery of spectacle was not simply for external consumption. It was deeply embedded in civic identity. Religious processions, naval displays, and state festivals were not just ornamenting. They reinforced Venice's mythology as La Serenissima, the invincible maritime republic. These displays of power, while performative, also served to unify the diverse elements of Venetian society. This engraving echoes the tradition of Venetian city views, like those of Jacopo de Barbari, where Venice is not shown as a place of struggle, but as an eternal and harmonious entity.
Dear Deborah, Venice is a stage, a dream, woven in silk and water. Beneath the gold, beneath the robes and jewels, she is still flesh, still vulnerable. I have walked among the nobility and the merchants, seen them parade in triumph and weep in ruin. What is Venice if not a courtesan among cities, dazzling splendor, yet always knowing that time, like a lover, will one day leave?
We must be more grounded. The function remains the same. Venice is still a city that must stage itself to survive. But the scale has shifted. The question is, how does Venice reclaim its narrative rather than be consumed by it? The large numbers of tourists and their management demand clever problem solving.
Indeed, we cannot escape the present, but let us not celebrate its waste. This place, once perhaps a market or a square of communion, now lies as a carcass of use, devoid of meaning, littered with remnants of brief occupation. We see the city repurposed as backdrop for temporary pleasure, and then cast aside. When a city becomes spectacle without soul, it is no longer a city. It is a shadow of one, sustained by the refuse of its own illusion.
This is the city after the revel, the morning after a night of pleasure, when the echoes of laughter still linger, but the wine has gone sour.
Yes, yes, what a glorious mess! The city reveals itself in these fragments, these scattered relics of an event now lost to time. A marketplace, a carnival, a protest. The ghosts of movement linger in these abandoned crates and crumpled papers. Is this the future of all cities, to be built, used, and discarded in ever shorter cycles?
Trash is a record of movement, of density, of urban use. If we tracked where this debris came from, where it gathers, and how long it stays, we could optimize waste management, design more sustainable urban spaces, and predict patterns of occupation. Instead of lamenting the ephemeral city, we could learn from it and design around it. The real tragedy is not the mess, it is that we do not use the information it leaves behind.
And now we are told to admire this latest triumph of engineering, a wall of steel and machinery raised against the tides. But is this salvation or a splendid delusion? Venice was never meant to conquer nature, only to coexist with it, delicately, reverently. These golden gates, vast and mechanical, may hold the water for a time, but they cannot hold the truth. When we forsake the spirit of the place for the convenience of the moment, we craft not protection but pretense.
Indeed, John, for centuries, Venetians have battled the sea, not by resisting it, but by learning to live with it. From the earliest wooden pilings driven into the lagoon to the redirection of rivers to prevent silting, Venice has survived through adaptation. The difference now is scale. This intervention is monumental, rigid, a barrier rather than a negotiation.
This barrier should not just react to high tides, it should anticipate them. Cities function as responsive networks. Why should this system be any different? These barriers should adapt rather than just react.
A magnificent, tragic sight. A wall against the inevitable, a barrier between the city and its eternal adversary. But is this defiance or is it fear? Venice was always meant to dance with the water, to embrace its instability. Now we see a city afraid of its own nature, shielding itself behind a mechanical facade. And I wonder, will future generations admire these barriers as they do the ruins of Rome? Or will they become forgotten relics of a futile battle against time? What will God make of this sinned city?
Ah, God. Maybe. But it is also about civic identity. Religious processions, miraculous interventions, and public gatherings were essential in shaping Venice's self-image. The architecture provides the frame, but the real focus is the people. The structured hierarchy of clergy, nobility, and commoners, all assembled to reaffirm their role in the Republic's myth. This is a city that has always performed its own identity, whether through politics, pageantry, or faith.
Deborah, but this is precisely the tragedy. Venice has learned too well the art of illusion. She has become a mistress of spectacle, yes, but at the cost of her soul.
Oh, how we love a performance! Venice is no mere city. She is a stage, a dream woven in silken water. But do not mistake this grandeur for permanence. Beneath the gold, beneath the robes and jewels, she is still flesh, still vulnerable.
Yes, the grandeur. A bridge, not merely for crossing, but for transformation. The shimmering water, the weight of the crowds, the divine intervention unfolding in the midst of it all. This is no mere city, but a dreamscape, a tableau where history and myth collapse into one another. Stone and story, both permanence and ephemera.
See Venice in the hands of a craftsman, in the dust on his fingers, in the weight of a tool long held. He does not preserve the past. He keeps it breathing, shaping it anew.
Veronica, I too see continuity. The Calle del Fabbro, or the Street of the Blacksmith, suggests that this was once a hub of craft and production. And even now, behind him, the open door reveals wood, tools, and material ready to be shaped. Is this man then a craftsman, or simply someone passing through a city that once belonged to its workers? If Venice is to survive as more than a tourist economy, streets like this must still serve the people who make the city function.
What a contrast! The man, modern, anonymous, stepping through a space marked by time. The wall is worn, the wood is old, the past lingers in every corner, yet he moves forward, indifferent or unaware. And what of his posture, half turning, as if about to leave, caught between presence and disappearance? Is he a part of this place, or merely a ghost?
Again, please, let us not over-romanticize the past. Let's ask how this space functions today. If we mapped the persistence of old trades versus the influx of tourist-driven commerce, we could perhaps design interventions to keep places like this alive. The future of the city depends on how spaces like these are used, not just how they are remembered. We must always look forward.
Ah, what a vision! Venice stripped of its edges, its precise geometry dissolved into light and shadow. This is not a city of stone and water, but of atmosphere, of memory. If I have drawn Venice in lines, in sharp contrasts between ruin and monument, but here we see its soul, barely held together as if at any moment it might fade into nothingness. Is this Venice as it is, or as it is dreamt?
A dream, yes, but one that reflects a truth. Venice has always been a city of blurred boundaries between land and sea, between past and present, between what is real and what is imagined. This Venice is one of mist, of transience, where light itself is an architectural force. It speaks to how Venice has been perceived throughout history, not just as a physical place, but as an idea, a mirage that shifts with the eye of the beholder.
Oh, to be painted like this, to exist not in flesh but in color, to be not a woman but a vision. She hovers between presence and absence, between the certainty of stone and the softness of water.
I see not dissolution, but danger. This is not the Venice of merchant republics, nor of sacred basilicas. It is a Venice reduced to mood, to fog, to the pleasing ache of nostalgia, the danger of loving beauty for its sadness.
John, Venice is not vanishing. It is shifting, evolving, reconfiguring itself for new ways of being seen, experienced, and inhabited. Today, we see the same phenomenon in virtual reconstructions, in data-driven urban models. We do not need to resist this fluidity. We need to harness it.
But can we measure light? Can we chart a mist? Venice eludes capture, whether in ink or in code. Perhaps we should, too.